Tonight, what about the suspect? What do we know about him? What is he saying to investigators? Brett Buffington has that part of the story. Brett?
Lynn, before that teenager was brought here to this jail in Galveston, he was questioned by police in Santa Fe. The document that charges Demetrius Pogorchis with killing his classmates and shooting that police officer says the teen told investigators he purposely didn't shoot people he liked. It was hard to tell.
Pork cheese. I apologize. My name is Judge Henry.
Through the closed-circuit TV feed.
Are you a citizen of the United States?
Yes, sir.
If Demetrius Pogorchis showed emotion, Galveston County's judge says he wasn't looking for it. In fact, the choice to not give the accused school shooter a bond was simple.
These are very serious charges. Either one of those charges I would likely deny bond, but with both of them, it was an easy decision.
Pogorchis is now facing a charge of capital murder, which in Texas could carry the death penalty. The 17-year-old also charged with shooting a police officer. Pogorchis tonight is in solitary confinement. He's asked for a public defender to represent him.
Are you requesting consideration for a court-appointed attorney?
Yes, sir.
We've now learned from investigators who questioned the teen after his arrest this morning, the accused school shooter told police he picked out people he liked and didn't shoot them so someone would tell his story. We also learned from the judge this afternoon that police don't believe any of those explosive devices found today would have actually blown up. They lacked the pieces of equipment that would have sparked an explosion. The judge described one of those as a Molotov cocktail. Lynn, he said another one, a pressure cooker filled with nails.